Good evening, Broncos country. Let's give it a moment for the stream to breathe. I want to make sure we include all the platforms here. So I want to make this an all-inclusive show. All right, and looks like we are good. Welcome in again to another episode of the Orange and Blue View. I am one of your hosts, Ron White. My partner in crime on that side, Dylan Von Arks. So, Dylan, we do have some news today, which we will get into. But before we do that, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing pretty good. I was sick the last couple weeks. Finally getting over that, getting some energy back, breathing normal. So yeah, pretty excited to talk some breaking news from today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, most definitely. And breaking it is now, I think most of Broncos country expected this news. And I think you and I were talking in the room before we got started that finally we knew it was going to happen. It was just a matter of when.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into that, guys, we want to just say hello to a few folks in the chat. See who we got coming in. We got Kevin Gray for coming in. Thank you, my man, for coming in as always. He says, evening. Ron, Dylan, and Scott, big mile high salute to Broncos country. I wish Jeudy well, knew it was going to happen. Denver Broncos for life, MHH for life. Buckham. Yes, Kevin, we will get to that here shortly. But before we get into that, we want to see who else has popped. And then again, Kevin, thank you for coming in. We appreciate you, my man. Let's see. Got David Yonkin coming in as always. Thank you for coming through time and time again, David. We appreciate you in the chat. He says, how was everyone tonight? Went from 6 to 8 draft picks. He's glad that he is gone. If Sutton stays with Tim Patrick and Mims and maybe one or two wide receiver draft picks, he may look good. Yeah. So let's get into it. So again, for anyone who's been under a rock today, the breaking news is that Broncos now will be former wide receiver Jerry Jeudy has been traded to the Cleveland Browns. So that's in exchange for 2 draft picks. Um, the Broncos will receive the Browns' 2024 fifth round pick, which is 135th overall, and the Browns' sixth round draft pick, which is 202nd overall. Also, with this move, the Broncos clear up approximately 13 million in salary cap space. So again, we all expected this. It was trending toward this, David and Dylan. Um, I'm glad that the Broncos were able to, at least get something in return for him. But you can see that the most important piece of this was getting him off the books, right? Making sure that the salary cap, again, trimming down the fat to make sure that they can remain cap compliant for this upcoming week. But, you know, I've been hearing some rumblings. What I've been seeing on Twitter, a lot of people don't think Jerry Judy's that great, but I wouldn't say he's not that great. I just feel as though that the production in Denver just wasn't there. And I know a lot of it was not all his fault, right? With this past season and the season before, he wasn't being targeted a lot. He was open at times, and Russell wasn't targeting him. So that factored into it as well. But, given that with, the character issues, I just feel as though it's time for Jeudy to move on and for him to start in a different place. And this also signals, Dylan, before I let you hop in here, the rebuild. This solidifies the rebuild. That this is Sean Payton's team. He's going to build this in his own vision. He wants to tear it down and build it back up. So if the Justin Simmons move, we kind of saw it from the Justin Simmons release, but this confirms a full-fledged rebuild for your Denver Broncos.
Yeah, we've been toiling in mediocrity and sadness for 8 years, and it only took Sean Payton 1 year when he stepped foot in here to see, oh yeah, this team nowhere where it needs to be, talent lacking, quarterback not going to work, and he's cleaning house. Justin Simmons released, Russell Wilson released. That means no one else is safe in my eyes. And yeah, now Jerry Jeudy. Obviously, the compensation, 5th and 6th round pick, that might not seem much, but the real prize, like you mentioned before, is that $13 million off the books. And I believe the Broncos are sitting at 30 to 31 million in cap space right now. So whether they choose to bring someone in free agency, probably a couple mid-tier level guys, fill out the roster, or with Russell Wilson's cap hit, if they decide to take, because they're going to probably split it up these next 2 seasons, if they decide they want to take the larger hit this year.
Correct.
That's also a possibility. So, yeah, like you mentioned, Jerry Jeudy didn't work out here. Part of it's his fault. Part of it's the Broncos' fault. It is what it is. Moving on, washing our hands of it.
Yeah, totally right there with you. And David, to hop on something that you mentioned here as it pertains to Sutton and the wide receiver group as a whole, I'm back and forth on what they're going to do with Sutton. I think now that they're probably going to try to see if here's how I see it again. It's just kind of how I see it, guys. I'm thinking that they're possibly trying to trade Sutton to see what value they can get, but no one's really biting. Given Sutton's production last year, I mean, he had a heck of a year last year, but I think the Broncos may not be getting what they're wanting in return for him. And so with that, I see maybe they try to keep Sutton, maybe with some sort of restructure. As you guys know that they re-sign, they're bringing back Tim Patrick. And I think with those two, you have your veterans in the room, and then you have Mims. And then if they draft another wide receiver or two with some of these other guys like Jalen Virgil coming back, Brandon Johnson, you may start to see this wide receiver group kind of take more shape, David. So I think, it only depends on if. And I think if the Broncos do trade Sutton, I think they're still good with Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick's been in the league for years, and he can definitely, mentor these young guys and provide that leadership. But definitely, I think Sutton more like might be staying. At least that's kind of what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Probably restructure. Obviously, we've seen he's pretty disgruntled on social media,
Yes,
which sucks. But that doesn't mean he's gonna be gone. He might calm down after a little while. But as to Mims' role, he should step into that number 2 spot at the combine. Sean Payton had that interview.
Right.
And talked about, well, we wanted to use Mims more, but he was playing the same position as Jeudy. So, yeah, that door's wide open for him to get more snaps and prove that he can be a dog in this wide receiver room.
Yeah. Yeah, and we saw flashes of Mims last year. And again, I always go back to that game too, against the Washington Commanders, and that was his breakout game. And so you're right on that. Mims could now step in and be that wide receiver too, when we can kind of see more of that explosion as we saw him, coming out of Oklahoma for. So very great. All righty. Thank you, David, again for coming with the super chat, man. We appreciate it. Good comment there.
Thanks, David.
All righty. Let's see who else we have. Got another super chat from DTR coming in. Thank you for coming in and showing support. He says, I might be the only one in the chat who feels this way, but the future looks bright in Broncos country. we have a competent coach who will sacrifice now to be great later. DTR, I cannot agree more with your statement. And what why the future looks bright is, well, not only because of Sean Payton, but because Sean Payton is seeing this team for what it is. He's seeing this team as a team that needs to rebuild, start over, and build it through the draft. Um, and that's the first part of it, Dylan, is being the leader, coming in and assessing where the team is and acknowledging that this team isn't going anywhere. Now, granted, they did have a chance at the playoffs last year. And, that was part of the reason why Jeudy wasn't, traded, at the deadline last year, just because the team was still in playoff contention. But now that they were out, Sean Payton knew that he tried to make it work with Russ. Didn't work. Jeudy was, not producing as he should. And then some of these players are getting older. Like I said, Justin Simmons, 31. He's at a point where all he's known since he's been in Denver is losing. So, having him being released to go to, what probably will be a contender. I think DTR, that helps with the future being bright. And of course, once Denver can get those draft picks going, right, we can get that young talent in there to work with some of the veterans. You'll start to see this team take shape. And again, I'm happy to see what will happen. Again, next year, there are not going to be any expectations next year just because the team knows where it is. There's no pretending that they can be in contention, Dylan. There's no false hope. They know that it is a year or 2 or 3 of rebuilding, and then yet let the young talent play. And they could, it might be outside chance, they could have a Houston Texans resurrection. Who knows? But again, you have to start rebuilding. Thank you, DTR, again.
Yeah, thank you, DTR. Much appreciated, my friend. Yeah, this team has needed this for so long. It's terrible. It's spinning our wheels for 8 years.
Yes.
Because the Broncos got it in their head that, we can just field the all-time defense or, a great to all-time defense and have a quarterback who's not a difference maker, and we can make the playoffs consistently, even though we know through years and years and years of football that that's not the case. The teams that get to the playoffs have that star quarterback, the ones that get there consistently. Yeah. Now, great defense, you can get there, but how far are you going to go? So, yeah, I'm really excited with what Peyton has cooking for us, and he this isn't fully his team yet. As of last year, he had one draft class, he had one free agent class, and that was it. And there's a few players sprinkled in here, but the majority of the rest of the roster, they haven't seen winning seasons ever.
And forever.
Losers. As I love a lot of them, like Justin Simmons. I got his jersey hanging up right over here, and I love him. But by definition, he's a loser. He hasn't seen a winning season. Besides, he was here for that 9-7 Simeon season, but beyond him, just nothing good going. So I'm glad we're finally headed in what seems to be the right direction.
Yeah, and on the that's I agree. Again, that's 100% right. And on the Justin Simmons portion, when that news first broke, I was a little bummed, at first, just because I don't have his jersey. I was actually thinking about getting his jersey. He was actually next on my list because I wanted to get PS2's jersey before his. Yeah. So I finally got the PS2 one, but that one was that one struck home a bit just because not only was Justin Simmons great on the field, he was great off the field, just in the community in Denver and what he's done. So, it was a bummer, but again, at the same time, with the contract situation, and again, the Broncos want to get younger financially. And from a long-term perspective, it made the most sense. So now, with the release, PJ Locke should be re-signed for sure.
Hmm.
And got Caden Stearns coming back from injury, and hopefully we see him signing up JL Skinner.
Yeah.
So again, there are some young folks, if they can stay healthy, they can pull through. Um, hopefully we can see them on the rise here in the few years in Broncos country.
Yeah, I think Luke made a good point on his show, Mile High Insiders, a couple days ago, that the pain going forward of these losses, they'll at least be growing pains. It's going to be the team getting better and figuring themselves out instead of, oh, this is a team full of veterans who just blew another game, or we can't seem to get going on offense or defense or whatever. It'll be growing pains. We'll be getting better, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, but again, every team has to go through that. I mean, that's what rebuilding is. You have to tear it down, build it back up through the draft. If you have the money to spend in free agency, get those players. And it's going to take a few years for it to mesh on offense and defense. Again, every team has to go through that in order for them to get to their ultimate goal. I mean, again, I take the 49ers as the prime example. When Shanahan first got there, I think it was 2017. Yeah. And it was understood that, it was those few years that the 49ers had to go through that rebuild. And then I think it was after 2 years when they got to the Super Bowl, 2 or 3 years, they got to the Super Bowl. So it's like they went through those growing pains in a few years, which is to be expected. And then once that roster got to the level, to a highly competitive level, then they started to compete for those Super Bowls. So, but yeah, it's going to be fun to see, Dylan. It's going to be fun to see what this young talent yields for sure. And again, thank you, DTR, for coming in.
Mm-hmm. And that's the message we want to get across. It's got to get worse before it gets better, guys. Trust on that.
Yep. All righty. Let's see who else we have.
I have some.
DTR.
Oh, you got.
I want to grab this again, kind of backing up the point of what I mentioned. Thank you again, DTR. I think we won the Jerry Jeudy trade. We created a good amount of cap space. That's correct. And avoid having to negotiate a contract with a player who has a big ego but limited production. Again, that's the point I'm trying to make. DTR, thank you for reiterating that. And that was the priority for the Broncos is, the creation of that cap space so they can maybe look at, again, re-signing some of their own and also bringing in, maybe some lower tier free agents. Don't expect them to be big spenders in free agency this year, but bringing in some of the second, third tier guys to help fill out the roster. But yeah, great point.
Yeah, I think it's great for both sides. Honestly, the Browns looking for another receiver to add to their room, low risk, high reward type of deal. 5th and 6th round pick. Those, especially from what I've been hearing, this draft class, especially in the later rounds this year, you could probably get a lot of those guys in UDFAs in other years. So if they can get someone they feel they can get a return on, like Jerry Jeudy, like you said, he had a lot of potential. It just didn't work out here, and maybe that changes scenery, that clicks with him, and he gets to be with former Crimson Tide member himself, Amari Cooper. So, and I believe that's who he said he wants to model his game after anyway. So I think it works out for both sides.
Yep, most definitely.
Let's see. All and then there's stars here from our friend Howie freaking Day.
Howie freaking Day. Thank you, Howie, for coming in. I haven't talked to you in a while, my man. Thank you. He says, "What's up, fellas? Looks like we are finally starting a true rebuild. No more band-aids. Who is still trade bait or cut victim? Hashtag welcome." Thank you, Howie, for coming in. And you're right. As far as the first point there, I think we all are looking forward. We're all happy that this rebuild is starting. It's been long overdue. Peyton is making boss moves, and I love it. So this is great. As far as trade bait. Um, Again, we mentioned so trade bait. Sutton is probably still on the table, and Bowles perhaps too could be trade candidates. Coming up in the next couple of days, maybe look for moves. Um, maybe from one of those two. Um, and then cut victim, DJ Jones. Now, I have been hearing with DJ Jones that the 49ers were interested in getting him back. So if that happens, maybe they maybe can pick up the Broncos can pick up a later round pick for DJ Jones and another swap. But I would say trade bait, Bull, Sutton, cut bait for sure, DJ Jones.
Yeah, Bowles, I think definitely would be up there. Especially we saw how disgruntled he was, kind of towards the end of the season. He's, oh, all we do here is lose, and I mean, he's not wrong. But yeah, I think he'd be a valuable trade piece, especially an offensive tackle. I know a lot of teams complain. Like you talk to any fan base, they'll say that they're, oh, our offensive line's the worst or whatever. But I think once you're inside like the top 15 of offensive lines, you're actually not doing too bad. But offensive tackle, especially, pretty scarce in terms of talent across the league. So if someone wants to trade for Bowles, I could definitely see that happening. I originally thought maybe the Cowboys because they let Tyron Smith go, or they could. But then you could think, hey, maybe with their first round pick, since there's so many good tackles, they'll take a guy. But either way, I think Bowles is definitely a valuable trade piece. And then, like we mentioned before, Cortland Sutton, if they can't find a restructure, and some teams looking for a proven veteran in this league and someone with great production, especially when it comes to those touchdowns.
Oh yes,
I think yeah, you could pawn him off for sure.
Yeah, and with Sutton, just the dependability, and the guy can just go up and get it. And I think any team would love that. I mean, we saw this year a resurgence of Cortland Sutton, and it was just so good to see. So again, that might be again what I alluded to there. How I don't know if you caught it earlier, but again, he's still up maybe as trade bait. But again, the more and more I think time is going by, I do see them sticking with Sutton just because you have to. We don't know. Also, we don't know what Tim Patrick's going to look like coming back from that Achilles injury. So you have to think about that as well, and you have to have someone there, kind of as your wide receiver one, and that would be Sutton. So again, we will see what happens, but yeah, man, Sutton is it'll be if he is traded, I'm gonna. It's gonna be more like the Justin Simmons, where I'm a little bit bummed out at first, but I'll understand.
Definitely. I'm right there with you, man.
Uh-huh.
And then it looks like we have a few more stars here from our buddy Phil McLaughlin.
Oh, Phil McLaughlin coming in. Thank you, sir. It's always good to see you in the chat, my man. He says, "Good evening, Ron and Dylan. I am probably the only one that feels this way, but I am not considering this a rebuild at this time. We got rid of older players on contracts that didn't make sense on our cap problems, and some players that just were not performing. If Bowles and Cush are gone, then I might change my mind. Hashtag Buckham, hashtag MHH for life, hashtag Broncos for life." That's an interesting perspective, Phil. I mean, the way I see it more. I guess I see what you're saying as far as some of those contracts, because you still have a lot of veteran players on the roster. Yeah, Bowles is still there, Sutton's still there. You have Javante's been in the league several years now, so Javante. So I would say, yeah, I get what you're saying, but I'm more considering this a rebuild because of the positions that are being, traded and or released, like those players at those positions. I mean, Russell Wilson, we right now, going into 2024, starting as Jared Stidham. And not to say that's the worst option, but the Broncos definitely need to do better than that at quarterback. So that's your most premium position. That's still somewhat unknown, and that needs to be addressed. One of your all pro safety, who has been there since, what is it, 2016, 2017, is no longer on the roster. And that also leaves somewhat of a void at safety. Again, we mentioned Stearns and PJ Locke. And again, as great as PJ Locke is, you know, the rest of the depth behind it, it's, like I said, Caden Stearns hasn't been healthy, and we haven't even seen JL Skinner on the field as much. So I guess I'm looking at it more from we're rebuilding, because you're right, we're getting rid of some of these contracts, right? And they were very crazy with the money, and and that's why we were over the cap. But when I look at these players at premium positions, that's where I'm saying this is in fact a rebuild.
Yeah, if it's not a rebuild yet, it's definitely trending in that direction. I mean, yeah, we still have to see what happens with Bowles, because offensive tackle with Bowles and wide receiver one with Sutton. We'll have to wait for those dominoes to fall. But even if just one of them is on their way out of Denver, I think you could still consider that a rebuild, because, like I mentioned before, this isn't even fully Sean Payton's team in terms of personnel. He had one free agent class, one draft class, and he didn't have much draft picks at that. So there's going to be some more turnover. I mean, you even saw Manhurts is gone, Jonathan Harris gone. Obviously, Jonathan Harris should never have been starting. Really wasn't his fault, because I mean, the Broncos didn't add any real bodies there, so he kind of got thrust out there. So not entirely his fault there, but it is what it is. Yeah, I don't think Cush is coming back. I think he's pricing himself out of Denver. It's going to be rough to find his replacement. Maybe that's Forsyth. Maybe that's a guy in the draft. But yeah, if Bowles gets traded, that's 2 spots on your offensive line gone. And I'd consider, I'd consider that a rebuild at that point.
Yeah, for sure. If your offensive line, is being swept away with Cush gone, with the Bowles gone, it's for sure. It's definitely a full-fledged rebuild, I think, for me at that point. But yeah, I get your perspective on that. That is an interesting perspective with the cap. But again, as we see, maybe another move or two come in the next few days, possibly, maybe some more restructures. We'll see what happens. But yeah, for me, it's Sean Payton is taking it, and for me, it's trending. Like you said, Dylan, if it's not a full-fledged rebuild, I think for some, it is trending in that direction for sure. Thank you, Phil, for coming in with Stars. We appreciate it, my man. Good seeing you again.
Always good to see Phil.
All righty. Let's see who else we got coming in. We got Mike Edel coming in. Thank you, sir, for coming in as always. Good to see you again in the chat. He says, thank goodness him and his attitude are gone. Now we can watch him drop passes for them. Yeah, those drops for Jeudy. You bring up a good point here, Mike. And some of those drops were just egregious drops, man. I'm like, Jeudy, you gotta catch that. I mean, I could think of a few plays even when I was at the Houston game. He put it right, Russ put it right there in the bread bucket, and Jeudy just can hold the ball, can handle it. But yeah, to your point, Mike, that's no longer Denver's problem. Hopefully, he can go to Cleveland and prosper. He has Amari Cooper there as a mentor, so the Alabama receivers can tag team, and whoever gets the ball and build up that friendship. Yeah, so no longer a problem. But yeah, he did. I don't know if you saw that, Dylan, on I think it was on Twitter,
Mhm.
that he posted that thank you. I think I saw it right before the thank you to Denver video, which I thought was pretty cool. But wish
Yeah,
him well, man. Wish him
yeah,
well.
pretty classy of him. I was expecting just him to peace out and be like, I'm out of here. But yeah, he has more drops than touchdowns. There was a couple last year where he caught the pass, but he didn't drag his toes. It's just
Oh yeah.
it's like, man, you almost had it. um, but yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to say he'll be missed, but yeah, hopefully, like you said, he moves on and uh, lives up to some of his potential. He's in the AFC still, so I don't want him to do that good.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Mike, for coming in. Uh let's see who else we have in the chat. Oh, we got Michael Davis coming in. Thank you, Mike, for your 499 super chat. We appreciate you, my man. He says, Aloha, gents. DVA read your article today, and I'm skeptical of Peyton's ability to draft us out of this mess as well. What are your thoughts? Since you wrote the article, Dylan, I'll let you answer that one first.
Yeah, so it was a piece on oh geez, the name. It's the Bucky Brooks and Daniel
Daniel Jeremiah.
Jeremiah podcast. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they had what they're calling like a championship foundation. So they have like your quarterback, two receivers. Just went down as the most important pieces on your team, and they listed them off. And so the only blue chip player the Broncos had, I'm sure you can guess, PS2.
Mm-hmm.
So and then he had a couple tiers, like good, and then uh, you know depends on contract, uh, age, and all that. And then there was like young and unproven. The Broncos only had PS2 up in that blue chip spot, and then in terms of good, I believe it was Quinn Miners and Zach Allen, and for some reason Mike McGlinchey. I don't know if I categorize him in good, but I like Zach Allen. And I think Quinn Miners is a foundational guy that you can build around. But the rest were, are they going to get traded? Is their contract bad? Are they injury prone? Which was a big one. And that was most of the rest of it. So, yeah, Peyton running the drafts for the past, was it 3? This will be his 4th one, I believe, his 4th draft class.
Yep. 3 or 4.
He seems to hit more on those UDFA guys. Not that he has, you got PS2, you got Javante, although, with his injuries, kind of up in the air. So, hey, those that 5th and 6th round pick we just got, maybe you get some value out of those later stuff. Like maybe, there's a UDFA that we want to prioritize. Let's use a late round draft pick on him instead and grab him that way. But yeah, Peyton's ability to draft, we'll see. This is him and the Peyton and Peyton draft room again this year, so it'll be interesting to see what they can cook up.
Yeah. But again, thank you, Michael. And I would say though, I would say Peyton has had the first year was great. With Peyton with the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And then there have been some hits, some misses since.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to be expected, right? You throw darts, you see what's out there. But I think, Michael, what's Peyton's, saving grace here is he's a very good scout.
Mm-hmm.
He's a more, I think, above average scout in my opinion. And you mentioned it, Dylan, that these UDFAs, he's really hit on. So I think given that, I'm not as skeptical, Michael, maybe as you are. Again, we'll see what happens, and you know, if the Broncos would even gain some more picks in this draft, and maybe get some more players here. But I'm not as skeptical as you are. Again, there are a few. When you look back at the past several draft classes, you do scratch your head on a few. But I would say overall, I'm okay with kind of how he's drafted. Again, that first year was good. The years since then have kind of been okay, but these UDFA's have kind of been more the story, at least for me. And um, I'm still encouraged with George Payton working with Sean Payton on you know finalizing, formulating this team with the draft prospects.
He's also had a lack of premium draft picks as well, so that definitely factors into that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's another thing. The premium rounds. I think that's where your knock on them might be here, Mike. Yeah, that those premium ones haven't really been hits. And you want to try to hit on, I know the Broncos haven't had first round in a little bit, but that second, third round for sure, you want to try to hit on as many as you can. I think, you know, um, Mims is going to be, and I know that was with Peyton as well, but Mims, um, is definitely going to be a good one. So again, there are a few here that I will kind of see what comes, but um, again, with the knock on the premium rounds, I think that's kind of where the knock is. I would say outside of that, again, that first draft class was good, and then the UDFA's come in. So, but yeah, that's a good question. Oh, go ahead, Dylan. You want to say something?
I would say one more thing before we move on. I'm more worried about Peyton's ability to hand out contracts than I am to draft at this point. Because he obviously he's had his misses in the draft. Everyone does, but those contracts that's what I'm a little more worried about with him.
Yeah, and we're seeing it now where these, overbloating of these contracts, we're seeing what the consequences are from those right now. So
yeah,
hopefully that hopefully that gets better.
Mm-hmm.
But again, Michael, thank you for coming in. All righty, let's see who else we have coming in the chat. Got Gary Palmer coming in with a super chat 999. Thank you, my man. It's good to see you here again. He says, "Hey guys, love the show. Thank you for tuning in. And contrary to the general opinion, I think Broncos will have a better year, maybe 10 wins. Ooh, interesting. Go Broncos." So, Gary, you're predicting a Houston Texans type of turnaround. Okay, I like it. I like it. Well, Gary, you never know, right? It really depends on how they build out the rest of this roster, and most importantly, who's under center.
Yeah.
Who's under center is a big part to this equation. If they can find a quarterback and this quarterback hits, we'll see what happens. With coaching, and I think the right guy is there at coach. With some of this young talent mixed in with some veterans, we'll see. But again, we just can't expect 10 wins. It would be nice to have 10 wins because now we would definitely be talking playoffs for sure. But to expect 10 wins given the current situation with the roster, given that you're going to have a rookie quarterback, it is less likely to happen. But I like your optimism. I like your optimism for sure. What do you say there, Dylan?
I'm surprised how optimistic you are after we've been beaten down these 8 years. I commend you for that. I might need to steal some of that optimism from you. My first thought was, did we land Caleb Williams somehow,
or Jane Daniels or somebody, right?
Yeah, someone up there, man. I mean, who knows? Like you said, maybe we have a Texans type season. Maybe the quarterback we draft, whether it be, a McCarthy, a Nix, a Penix, or whatever, they trade up, get one of those top 3 guys, which won't happen, but with coaching, anything's possible. Honestly, with the amount of wins we got last season, was pretty astounding. Like with all the Peyton squeezed whatever he could out of the talent he had, all the lemons that we had, all those sour lemons. He squeezed what he could out of them, and we got to an 8-win season somehow, where it probably should have been a 3 to 4 win season.
Oh yeah.
So if Peyton could do that with the squad we had last year, hey, maybe with some young talent injected into this roster, maybe we do get more wins. I'm not going to bet on it, but anything's possible.
Yeah, but again, Gary, thank you for coming in with the 999 super chat, and again, thank you for coming with your optimism. And again, a 10-win season, that would be very encouraging. Again, having that Houston, Texas turnaround, or Dylan even having something similar to a Green Bay type season. Now we understand that Jordan Love, it wasn't. He's not a rookie, but it was his first full year starting, and they have so much young talent on that squad. And, they just let the young talent go and got to the playoffs. So, if you can even have that, and I think they went 9-8, I believe. So even that type of season would would make Broncos fans happy for sure. But again, we will see what happens, Gary. But again, thank you for coming in with that. We appreciate it.
Well, and it looks like Phil has got some more.
Thank you, Phil, for coming back in. Appreciate you. He says, so guys, with the players we have let go, we need to draft. So do we trade back and get more picks? Do we get a QB later and bring in an established QB to train a rookie? Yeah, this is a good question, Phil. And I would say I'm thinking that they would probably bring in a free agent quarterback to kind of bridge the gap. It depends on what they do at quarterback, where they select the quarterback. I do think if they stay there at 12, and let's say they get a JJ McCarthy there at 12. Let's say he does fall to 12. He might compete with Jared Stidham, Camp, and he probably actually win the job, and then he might just play. Maybe even the same with the Bo Nix. I think with Bo Nix, though, and this goes to your second point, I would want Bo Nix in a trade back. Again, McCarthy, I'm okay with at 12. Bo Nix, I want in a trade back. Because with that, you'll probably get a second round pick with a trade back, which again, the Broncos don't have a second round pick at the moment. So, I can definitely see them bringing in, if I would say again, if it's a Bo Nix or McCarthy, they can probably still bring in someone, Dylan. But I think it's more likely they bring in someone if they draft a quarterback like day 2. Like if they draft, because I think someone like a Michael Pratt needs some work. Like I said, some potential's there, but he needs some work. I like Spencer Rattler, but he could also use some development. So it kind of depends on where they select those. But I see Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy being more of it. They can come in and start. With some of those other ones, I see them maybe sitting a year and kind of letting that veteran, that free agent, come in and mold them. But what do you think they're doing?
Trading back's definitely an option for the Broncos. Like, say if McCarthy or Nix is there at 12 and they don't love them for whatever reason, trading back's perfectly fine. Get more picks. Maybe I know that might not be something Broncos fans want to hear, but
Yeah, right.
skipping quarterback in the first round this year and maybe waiting till next year or in the later rounds. Um, and this, I'm probably going to get crucified for this as well. But I the idea of a well, you say established, but at least a veteran, like in my pick, would be Sam Darnold. I know he he was with a terrible organization with the Jets, and I'm not saying like he's here to be the answer. He's in whatnot. I'm saying he's here to play for a year and have a rookie sit behind him. But he played in a terrible organization with the Jets, went to a comparably terrible one with the Panthers, but he had a year to sit in the Shanahan system, calm down. Maybe the ghosts went away. Maybe he's not seeing them anymore. But he had a year to settle. So I'm of the mind that we bring in Sam Darnold or another veteran quarterback, because you look at Stidham's contract too. I believe he has a $7 million cap hit this year, something silly like that. And if they decide to move on from him, I would prefer to have another veteran come in here. I don't think a rookie, especially with the Sean Payton system, it's complicated. Like it's not I just don't see a rookie starting week one, regardless of where we draft them. So I definitely go get your veteran and then go to the draft. And if you like a guy, take him and he can sit for a year.
Yeah, and I do think that is more than likely the outcome that the Broncos will try to target. Yeah, definitely. Sam Darnold has been discussed and speculated. I know they're as well, so that you can maybe see that. I know there have been talks of Mac Jones, which I want no parts of at all, in Denver. And again, with Sam Darnold, now I think that the coaching is better. So again, at the 49ers, he had Kyle Shanahan, and then he'll have Sean Payton. So I think bringing in Sam Darnold, given the circumstances in Denver, wouldn't be a bad thing. And again, you may need to have, again, depending on, again, I look at it from just kind of where they think where they draft a quarterback, because that'll kind of tell you in a way what they're thinking as far as this person can come right in versus this person may need to sit a little while. But I think it would even, regardless of what happens, it would be good for the Broncos to bring in some veteran presence at that position and leadership for the rookie as well. So, but yeah, Phil, thank you for coming in with that question. We appreciate it. All right, let's see. The chat is hot and heavy tonight, guys. And again, no producer again, so we are just manning this here. Let's see who else we got coming in. We got David Yunkin coming in with another $4.99 super chat. Thank you, my man. He says, I think that Broncos country will be surprised on the first draft pick. Something is telling me that a big move may happen. Yeah, David. I mean, I don't know. It could be a move. I'm just not sure of. I guess would it be classified as big? They could move up. They could move back. But those are definitely some moves. I don't see. Again, if a May and or a McCarthy starts to fall possibly and maybe to that number 8 pick, that might be a move the Broncos make. Or if, let's say, those two are gone and they think Knicks will be there in the 20s, they can move back. So I do expect. I honestly, Dylan, I don't expect the Broncos to stay there at 12. I really don't. I really think they want the second round pick, and I foresee a trade back. I foresee a trade back happening. Again, if a few of the players aren't there, I will say I think maybe like one of those receivers are higher on their board. Maybe a Brock Bowers is there at 12. Um, they might prioritize edge there perhaps, or they maybe can wait later do an edge. But I'm saying if one of those receivers and or Brock Bowers is still there and play at 12, and those quarterbacks that were high up are gone, then I'm expecting the Broncos to probably take a Brock Bowers at 12.
Yeah.
But let's say all of them are gone. That again, that trade back seems more likely. But yeah, David, I guess I say all that to say I do expect some move is going to happen. Again, if their guy isn't there, or if their guy is falling, kind of depends on the nature of the scenario. I do expect a move to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think at least in my mind, probably the number one surprise. You see, Drake May seems to be falling out of favor with the media, and who knows if that's the same with how the teams feel. But say if he falls down to a 5 or a 6, somewhere in that range. Well, actually, the Chargers are there, so they probably wouldn't want to do business with us.
Oh yeah.
But if he starts to slip, that's a one scenario where you could see a surprise trade up. I know it's not likely, but as a lot of people have said before, oh well, we want to get PS2 out of town because we want draft picks. If there was ever a time to move him, it's if a Drake May is falling, or another, assuming that's Peyton's guy, or that might be the time to move up. But I think a more likely surprise would be the Broncos taking a receiver that falls. Maybe Rome Odunze falls, or for whatever reason, a Malik Neighbor falls, because
or Brian Thomas.
Yeah, I've seen him
That's
going up draft. Yeah, I've seen him. He's been going up draft boards recently, but with maybe some teams are trading up to get a quarterback, or an offensive tackle, or what have you, and one of these receivers falls. I think that's a direction the Broncos could go as a dark horse option.
Yeah, you're right. And I really think Odunze and Neighbors are going to go in top 10. I have this feeling. I think those guys have talent. I can see definitely a Brian Thomas being there, more likely at 12. And again, I just watched some of his film today, and man, he's good. So yeah, that can definitely be it as well. Again, Brock Bowers, one of these receivers, as we were just alluding to, and the Broncos will just stay right there, or they can trade back in the 20s and grab like an Xavier Worthy before the Chiefs get a chance to get him. Right. So again, lots of different scenarios there, David. But I think your point remains that I foresee some move happen. So, all right. Let's see who else. We got the Ronk coming in, as always. Thank you, Michael Ronkiel. It's always good to see you in the chat. He says, good evening, Ron and Dylan on Orange and Blue View. Go Broncos. Thank you, Michael. Hopefully you are having a great Saturday, my man. Appreciate you coming in the chat.
Always good to see you, Michael.
Yep, and he follows it up. Jerry Jeudy is finally gone. Yep. Gonzos. He is in Cleveland, or headed to Cleveland. All righty.
Let's see, we have Lawrence Rivera here.
Okay, Lawrence Rivera coming in. Thank you, my man. He says, I can't stop this feeling deep inside of me. I'm Groot happy dancing right now with Jeudy gone. But that deal was not in our favor, that's for sure. Well, Lawrence, I guess I tend to disagree on the fact that it wasn't in our favor, just because, again, it did the Broncos well just for the cap relief. The cap relief alone is why I think it was good. Again, the Broncos prioritized the cap relief over the return and what they can get back for him. So when you're cleared up 13 million in salary cap space with a trade, I would say that was a win for the Broncos. And again, it's a win for both sides, where Jeudy can go and potentially prosper in Cleveland with Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper, and Kevin Stefanski. So I'm with you on the first portion that, I'm happy he's gone because, you know, good, okay player, I guess, while in Denver, but it just didn't work out. Again, the production wasn't consistent. Um, Again, he was labeled that diva receiver, right, by many. So that is gone, and I'm happy, and I'm kind of dancing right there with you. But again, I want to push back on it wasn't in our favor. And again, you might be talking, and I'm assuming you're talking about that what we got in return. And again, the fact that we even got something in return for him was great. It's good that 5th and 6th round picks are great, but again, the Broncos really wanted to free up money on the books. They wanted to really clear up money on that salary cap, and I think that's a win predominantly for the Broncos.
Yeah, getting that money off the books definitely is going to give this team more wiggle room if they want to. Like 13 million, you can get 2 to 3 solid starters or even depth pieces to fill out this roster. And for a receiver who really wasn't producing anyway, I'd say that's a win. You get a 5th and 6th round pick. Weren't going to get more than that for his production and just his attitude. Like it sucks because he was a 1st round pick, 15th overall, didn't work out, but that's where we are now. So, and I know I heard Adam Schefter talking about how they were offered a 3rd and a 5th at the trade deadline. In the moment, it looks like we're making a push for the playoffs. And above all, what a coach wants to do is win. So that doesn't mean getting rid of pieces. And everyone in hindsight could say, "Oh, well, we should have traded him." Oh, but it just was not the feeling at the time. And I can guarantee most of you felt the same way.
Right.
But hey, things work out how they do, and like we've both said before, I think this is a win for both teams.
Yeah. And yeah, at the trade deadline, again, guys, it's the value would have been higher, but again, the Broncos were in playoff contention. And to your point, Dylan, it's you don't want to break the band up when the band is being successful. And again, the Broncos were good and rolling. So
yeah, what would the perception have been of Sean if he was like, okay, we beat the Packers, we beat the Chiefs, we have a chance to go on a roll here. Let's get rid of everything. Like that's a terrible look.
Right. So, but again, Lawrence, thank you for coming in. And again, I think a lot of us are happy that Jeudy's gone, but look at it from a financial perspective that's what's in the Broncos' favor. That's the win for the Broncos. That now they're under the cap. They are now cap compliant, and can try to look at maybe restructuring some other folks and maybe looking at free agency with some of those lower tier players. Alrighty, thank you. Let's see who else. We're kind of almost at the hour mark here, guys, but the chat's so hot and heavy tonight. We may go a little bit over. Yeah. Let's see who else we have coming in. Oh, we got a super chat here from BLD 2342, $5 super chat. Thank you for coming in. He says, "What late round QB would be a good fit for the Broncos?" Dylan, I'll let you take this one first.
Late round fit. Because obviously you have like the 2nd tier guys like a Penix, a Nix, maybe. I know some people like Nix a lot more than others, but later round, what was his name? Devin Leary. He actually looked pretty solid at the combine, the quarterback out of Kentucky. Now, I'm not sure where you would take him, probably sometime day 3. I'd imagine his stock wasn't too high before the combine. But he was making some solid throws, and his arm strength actually looked pretty solid, especially on those out routes they were throwing there. And for other ones, I used to like Michael Pratt a lot more, but after the Senior Bowl, his arm just doesn't look very active, man. He just looks like he has to really try to fit in balls into the places that he wants, and it just doesn't. He doesn't have that velocity that you like to see, even in like the shorter to intermediate range. But yeah, I would have to go with Devin Leary.
Yeah, actually, Devin Leary's on my list as well. Thank you, BLD. Devin Leary is one. Michael Pratt, I'm with you where he doesn't have the best arm. He can throw in the middle of the field, which Peyton likes, obviously, but I don't know, that it factor for him isn't there for me for some reason. He's just he's just okay. But I'm not, as far as fit, yeah, he would fit what Peyton wants, but I just see some things from him that it's not really. I think he has a lot to improve upon. Joe Milton was another one potentially. Maybe later on, he has a rocket of an arm. Man, that guy can throw it. I know kind of in his intermediate type throws. Sometimes reading defense needs to work on that. But yeah, the dude's a baller. So I would say those three would be, as far as fits, those are probably the three later round fits at QB for Denver. Good question, though. Thank you for coming in. All righty, let's see. So we're going to start wrapping up here, guys. Let's see.
Looks like Phil has got some more stars for us here, and a fantastic question as well.
Thank you, Phil, for coming in from Facebook. He says, so we all know we need a QB, but we also need O lineman, D lineman, edge, tight end. Yeah, the list goes on. So what do you guys want after QB? That's a great question. I want edge. I think after QB, edge is probably the position up next. And then we've alluded to it, Dylan, where I look at the Broncos edge group as kind of the sum of their parts. You have some pretty good players there, some solid players with Cooper, and of course Baron Browning is good, and Nick Medito came on. But as we always say, you need that premier, that elite, that pass rusher that by name, that every team has to account for. You need that on the roster. So if the Broncos can get that, I would say that's probably the need after QB, right there with interior defensive line. That interior defensive line, starters are in, and then the depth behind it, it's even worse. So edge and D line, especially the interior defensive line field, would be the groups that I would want the Broncos to focus on after QB.
I agree 100% with you there. We need to get some push on the defensive line. I know a lot of people have been talking up corner earlier, but we put so many assets into there, and if we're getting no push on the defensive line, where you're asking those corners to cover for like 10 plus seconds anyway. So it's like, let's have Riley Moss. Let's test him out, and then we can move into some other positions with our other picks. Like you said, defensive line, push up the middle has been something lacking for years in Denver. And edge, like you said, there's things to like about all the guys that we have there, but none of them have proven to break through to be the guy. The closest one has been Baron Browning. He can't stay healthy. Yeah. Nick Bonito, he gets washed out in the run game, and Jonathan Cooper is for a 7th round pick, he's been great, but he's not a guy you want starting consistently. He's a great rotational piece, but you want that number one guy at the edge position, and then I think in there too you could throw an O line somewhere. Maybe you get a guard or a center, probably preferably center because there's going to be a hole there pretty quick. But if you feel you want to build up the trenches, say Ben Powers still isn't working out. You have someone waiting in the wings behind him, and Zach Strief has been amazing developing these guys. Bowles had one of his better seasons this past year.
Mm-hmm.
Quinn Miners looked great as always, and they were, I believe, they were the 8th ranked pass blocking O line, which you wouldn't be able to know because Russell Wilson was bailing out of pockets early and stuff and making it a little harder on him. So, yeah, those 3 positions or areas are somewhere I'd like the Broncos to take a look at after QB, assuming they find their guy.
Yeah, definitely. But great. I agree with you. Yeah, great question, Phil. And I would say if we want to kind of rank them here, Dylan. Defensive line edge. Then I would say, well, it depends on what happens with O-line.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't see Cush coming back, so with that, I mean, probably going to keep Bowles. I would say O-line maybe isn't. I would say tight end after after our defensive line and edge, because Greg Dulcich was supposed to be that guy, but he just, and again, it's there to remain seen. We'll see what happens. So when he's on the field, he's great.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of he needs to be on the field. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Which I do see the Broncos definitely targeting tight end. Again, if it's not Brock Bowers, it's going to be definitely in the later rounds. But yeah, tight end, and then I would say, I would even say inside linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what happens with Josie Jewell. Drew Sanders now moving to edge, but so now that kind of leaves the void with the inside linebacker. I don't know what they're going to do with it. And then offensive line for sure. But I think that those would kind of be how I rank and prioritize those position groups, Phil.
Yeah, I agree too with your assessment of the tight end coming shortly after, just because Peyton has utilized tight ends throughout his career. I think most recently, was it Jared Cook? Was it Jared Cook when he was with the Saints, I believe? And so he utilized him very well. I would love for it to be Dulcich, and like you said, when he's on the field, he's been good. What worries me is that the injury was the same hamstring, 2 different seasons, and that's really worrisome. But explosive playmaker from the tight end position is something that's been lacking for a long time, and I'd be more than happy to have another one of those in Denver, especially with a young quarterback. Would be a great security blanket.
Yeah. Thank you, Phil, again for coming in. All right, guys. There's a few more super chats, and after those, we gotta head out. So let's see who else we got. We got Mike Edo coming back in with a $20 super chat. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate you for this, my man, as always. He says, "Good evening, Ron, Dylan, and Scott." Again, no Scott, but thank you. "I trust Sean Payton. I like the idea of getting rid of players who don't want to be here. I don't see them picking a young quarterback without having a stable left tackle or lefty QB." Michael Penix. Hint, hint. Thank you, Mike, for coming in. Yeah, and I think that's why I've been on the train of keeping Bowles, Mike. To your point of you have to have, well, on both sides, both right and left tackle, you have to have stability at the left tackle position. And Bowles has been pretty like I said, above average for sure this year, as you mentioned, Dylan, right? With Strife coming in, he definitely has been good. And to trade Bowles, I think, with a rookie coming in, just would be a disservice, quite honestly. I just don't see how that would make sense just with a rookie coming in. Now, to your question on the lefty QB, perhaps, right? And then now you leave open the right tackle for the lefty, and I cringe with the thought of Michael Penix throwing and Mike McGlinchey's there. Again, that's your weak link on the offensive line, and it's like, oh
Mm-hmm.
dear. So needless to say, Mike, the tackle position has to be stable. And again, given what Bowles has done, how he's performed, I think, like I said, Bowles has been average, above average this year for sure. Bowles has been great. I just don't see them having this. This quarterback can't really develop and be protected without them having stability at those tackle positions. But good question and good point there for sure.
Yeah, and dependent on too if how quickly that quarterback gets the ball out, because as we know, Russell held the ball for quite a while, and that puts a lot of stress on your offensive line. And being a rookie quarterback, I could see that being the case.
Yeah.
So if say Bowles is cut or traded or what have you, I think that changes the Broncos' priorities pretty significantly when it comes to the draft, especially at 12. If they get to 12 and there's a guy they really like, they'll probably just end up taking him there if Bowles isn't on the team.
Yep. Thank you, Mike, again for coming in. And then is other chat from DTR, $5 super chat. He says, "What is the official cap space for Denver as it stands?" I've read anywhere from 12 to 30. I believe it's around 30.
I think it's 31
31,
actually.
30 or 31
30,
million.
31, somewhere right there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So some room to work with for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, a little bit of room there, DTR. So it's around 30 million in the cap as it stands today. Thank you again for coming, my man. All right, guys. Well, again, we went over our hour mark. Again, thank you for coming in, and I understand it was a hot and heavy news night with the Jerry Jeudy news. So, but again, we appreciate you guys coming in, and we got the Ronk coming back in, saying great show tonight, Ron and Dylan on Orange and Blue View. Go Broncos! Thank you, sir. That means a lot. So again, guys, thanks for tuning in. As always, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share all the platforms. Check out the site, milehighhuddle.com, and read all of the articles, as many as you can. Again, we have articles coming in as the news breaks. So make sure you guys tune in. And we'll see you guys next week. Hopefully, you guys are having a good Saturday. Did you have any parting words for us, Dylan?
No, just glad it seems we're finally moving in the right direction. Yeah, I hopefully I'm sure we'll see news it seems day to day, which is awesome for us and for you guys.
Yes.
So hopefully that train continues, and hopefully we're headed in the right direction here with the Broncos.
Yes. Well, again, that this rebuild is underway, everyone. And again, that's how we see it. It's been long overdue, and now it has started. So again, we'll see what happens in the coming days and in free agency. But until next week, guys, you guys have a great week, and we will talk to you next weekend. Go Broncos!
Go Broncos!